on the Great Depression, it seems to me like many of the solutions that the government and the central bankers intervened with actually exacerbated the problems that the economy and the markets were facing. Is this a fair judgment?
The Depression dynamic as sort of two different periods. One where the response to financial instability or financial deterioration was we should tighten our belts, right? And I think that that's actually quite the reason why you often see folks in central banks facing a debt to leveraging cycle initially respond using that set of tools is because for any one individual, that's the rational choice, right? The rational choice is if you've borrowed too much and you're spending too much relative to your income, then what you should do is you should reduce your spending relative to your income and pay back your debts, right? That actually, like from an intuition perspective, makes a lot of sense, right? There's reasons why when people see the government borrowing too much, they say, what we should really do is implement austerity, right? The problem with, and that was like, I mean, it wasn't just to be clear, like, it's not just, oh, those silly people back in the 1920s implemented austerity in response to debt deleveraging. Like Europe did exactly the same thing in the 2010s, right? So it's not like this is, some totally foreign way of approaching it. It's very typical. It's a very typical way of approaching it. The problem with that is that it fails to take into consideration that one person's spending is another person's income. And if everyone is tightening their belt at the same time, then you have this core problem that everyone is trying to cut their spending all at the same time, which is cutting everyone's incomes, which is having second and third order effects. And so this is typically what you see the initial move to austerity, thinking that will solve the problem because of that individual intuition. It exacerbates the problem, right? And as a function of that, then you get into a worse problem. And when you get into that worse problem, the only solution to that problem, and this is really what's called the second half of the Depression period, is the only way to deal with that problem is to re-liquify in one form or another, right? And so that involves, there's a bunch of different steps to deal with that, but things like money printing, which is more in the modern context, or back in the 30s context, devaluing money relative to gold, which is really devaluing money relative to stuff, right? The real productive capacity of all the stuff in the economy allowed people to get out of that negative downward spiral. The key question is, you want to do that, you want to do enough of that to offset the deflationary force, but you don't want to do so much of it that it creates a circumstance where money is being devalued too much, and you start to run into issues with, the exchange rate and overall inflation. But almost always in these circumstances, what you see is that the central banks do too little for too long to get things going.